Hey everybody, Raider X here on the Combat Craig Media Network. So it looks like the VA wants to get rid of approximately 83,000 employees between now and August. They're looking like they're wanting to do a big, what they call reduction in force. Let's explore that and see what the possible ramifications of that situation might be. Let me share my screen with you and let's take a look at this.
Let me jump in here real quick and tell you about my boot camp. If you want to learn more about the VA claims process, check out my boot camp. You can talk to me live. There's a link on the website and in the description, combatcraig.com. And also, if you need medical evidence like a nexus or documenting your symptoms properly, go to our website, combatcraig.com, and it says medteam/nexus letters. Click on that link, fill out the form, boom, you're done.
So the VA plans to lay off as many as 83,000 employees this year. A leaked memo released Tuesday called for VA to slash its workforce to 2019 levels that were in place before millions of veterans became newly eligible for care. All right, again, so this was from 2 days ago. We'll briefly go over this. I'll have the articles linked because there's a couple more other things we want to go over that I've got tabbed up above. That'll go into it in some more detail. So the Department of Veterans Affairs is planning to lay off tens of thousands of employees throughout its organization later this year, according to an internal memorandum distributed to top staff on Tuesday. And yes, I have that memorandum. We'll get that in just a little bit. Anyways, so that's the memo that they're pulling the information off of. VA will soon kick off a department-wide review of its mission, organization, and structure, according to a memo which was obtained by government executive. It will work in partnership with the Department of Government Efficiency to create a workforce optimization plan. VA Chief of Staff Christopher Sarek said in the document. Said the VA will move aggressively, whatever that means. I mean, it's going to take about 6 months, so I guess for the government, that's aggressively, to implement its plans that reduce management and bureaucracy, cut the department's footprint, and increase workforce efficiency. The forthcoming reduction in force, Sarek said, will resize and tailor the workforce to the mission and revise structure. More than 1 in 4 VA employees are veterans. That's something to consider, but that's just more of a statement of fact. I don't think the fact that somebody's a veteran or not will be a determining factor on whether they keep their jobs or not, or are part of the reduction in force. We can also get into that. So the memo follows 2 executive orders President Trump issued calling for agencies to reshape their workforces and develop RIFs, which are reduction in force and reorganization plans. VA has largely exempted its workforce from government-wide hiring freeze and fired a relatively small portion of probationary employees, leaving some question as to whether the department would have to lay off employees at all. VA staffed up significantly under the Biden administration, including a record-setting fiscal year 2023, where VHA alone hired 61,000 new employees. Both VA and VBA has been staffing up to accommodate the flood of veterans newly eligible for care and benefits under the PACT Act though hiring slowed in fiscal year 2024. The forthcoming cuts will be sweeping and spare no part of government, Sarek said. He set the initial target of VA staffing levels in fiscal year 2019, which was right around 399,000 workers. VA currently employs 482,000 employees, and that's where they get the 83,000 number from. 482 down to 399 is 83,000. Of those 482,000, 459 are full-time workers, meaning the VA plans to slash its workforce by upwards of 83,000 individuals. So, of course, you're going to get people chiming in. So first is Mark Takano, a Democrat from California. He's the top Democrat on the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and said the VA's plan was not just dangerous, but an outright betrayal of veterans. That remains to be seen. I mean, we don't know that yet. It's a lot of fear porn initially, but I mean, what do you expect? And that's kind of how both sides like to argue the points that they're against. He noted that the VA had to grow its workforce to meet new demands. And I guess by the new demands, it's the PACT Act and everything else that's been implemented in the past couple of years. So he continues and says, cutting VA's staffing to pre-PACT levels will cripple the very system that millions of veterans rely on, denying them access to life-saving health care, claims processing, and education benefits they earned. That remains to be seen. We don't know if that's necessarily the case, but he's definitely speculating on that for sure. I mean, there's no proof that that's actually going to happen, but it is a possibility. We can concede that. The VA will hold a information gathering meeting on its reorganization and reduction of force efforts next week. And per Trump administration guidance, will deliver full plans to the Office of Personnel Management and Office of Management and Budget by April 14th. And in the memo I'm going to show you next, it's going to detail what's going on with that. So the department will review its plans from individual components in May and release its organization's plans in June. The VA will stand up an implementation team. The reorganization implementation cell made of human resources and operations, security and preparedness staff. The most administrations and offices will have high-level staff participating. When we're talking about the GS-14 level staff, and that goes into it in the memo, which I'll show you here in just a minute. VA liaisons to DOJ will be integrated into the VA RIC operations, which again is a reorganization implementation cell, ensuring positive and continuous communications with administration through all phases of the operation, Sarek said. VA Secretary Doug Collins will chair an initial meeting, which was held on Wednesday, yesterday, as I go over this, to spearhead the reorganization and workforce reduction efforts. He or someone he designates will lead the department's executive review group as the plans move forward. Then they go into more partisan kind of rhetoric where they talked about the Trump administration has faced significant pushback from Democratic lawmakers and veterans service organizations over its inclusion of both VA and government veterans across government in its recent hiring efforts. Alina Habba, a White House advisor, it's more like the president's lawyer, but regardless, came under fire on Tuesday after she said the administration will care for veterans in the right way. Perhaps they're not all fit to have a job at this moment. It's debatable. I mean, there's plenty of veterans who, even if they're disabled, service connected, whatnot, fitness of the job, that's that's going to be determined by the decision makers at this point. So we'll wait and see. We'll take a wait and see approach on that. If the VA is looking to reduce its footprint, it'll likely run into significant resistance. Well, yeah, we know that's going to be the case for sure, potentially from both sides of the aisle. The Biden administration put forward a plan in 2022, which would have closed or consolidated more than 200 VA facilities, but a bipartisan group of lawmakers spiked the effort. Takano said VA's reorganization of workforce plans will create chaos across every aspect of the VA, including by delaying benefits, straining claims processing, and making it nearly impossible for student veterans to get the assistance they need. He vowed that he and his colleagues will fight back on the proposal. So again, we're gonna have to wait and see on that. When he's mentioning student veterans, I'm guessing those are the people who are receiving post 9/11 benefits for education, Chapter 35 benefits, things of, that nature where money is getting paid out for schooling and things like that. The American people in Congress will not stand by while VA is hollowed out. And I think that's probably a little bit overblown. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be hollowed out. Numbers looks like will be reduced, but hollowed out is what they're doing to USAID. A reduction of 83,000 people down to 2019 numbers isn't necessarily hollowing out the VA. But he goes on to say, leaving veterans to suffer the consequences. And again, that remains to be seen because, there does need to be some sort of streamlining that probably could be done. And then, of course, Senator Richard Blumenthal, the senator from Connecticut, wants to chime in and Says the plan indicated the Trump administration planned to push for more privatized care for veterans. That may or may not be true. I mean, if we look at the Mission Act that was put forth in 2019, an argument could be made for that. But it continues and would risk rolling back the progress made under the PACT Act. It's a shameful betrayal, and veterans will pay the price for their unforgivable corruption, incompetence, and immorality, Blumenthal said. So, who exactly is unforgivable corruption, incompetence, and immorality? I guess he leaves that for us to figure out.
Let me jump in here real quick and tell you about my boot camp. If you want to learn more about the VA claims process, check out my boot camp. You can talk to me live. There's a link on the website and in the description, combatcraig.com. And also, if you need medical evidence like a nexus or documenting your symptoms properly, go to our website, combatcraig.com, and it says medteam/nexus letters. Click on that link, fill out the form, boom, you're done.
But anyway, so that's that article, and that article was courtesy of Government Executive. So let's take a look at this notice that's going on, and this was from the Chief of Staff, and it was dated May 4th, Department of Veterans Affairs, Agency Reduction in Force and Reorganization Plans. And this was sent out to the undersecretaries, assistant secretaries, and other key officials. So this was the quote unquote leaked memo that was referenced in the article we just went over. And this memo initiates the Department of Veterans Affairs department-wide review of the mission, organization, and structure in order to achieve efficiencies dictated by the President Trump's February 11th, 2025 executive order implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency Workforce Optimization Initiative and the subsequent February 26, 2025 Office of Personnel Management and Office of Management and Budgeting guidance document on RIF and reorganization plans. So when they say department-wide, you're looking at VBA, VHA, cemetery, and all aspects of the VA. So it's going to be, again, VA wide. The VA, in partnership with our Doge leads, will move out aggressively while taking a pragmatic and disciplined approach to identify and eliminate waste. And we'll see how pragmatic and disciplined that turns out to be. Time will tell. Reduce management and bureaucracy. Well, we can definitely see that management does need to be reduced because there is a lot of bureaucracy going on there. Reduce the footprint and increase workforce efficiency. And that's part of the reason why they wanted to bring back people into the office, because they think people being back in the office is going to increase workforce efficiency. Again, that remains to be seen, but just throwing it out there. Additionally, a portion of the savings garnered will be reinvested in the veterans we serve and the systems required to support our workforce and execute our mission. Following a thorough review of mission and structure, the department will effect a VA-wide RIF, again, that's a reduction in force, in August to resize and tailor the workforce to the mission and revised structure. This effort will require the entirety of VA staff and organizations to work together in a collaborative fashion, as well to coordinate actions with Doge and the administration as a whole. To achieve the desired results within the allotted time, for planning purposes, the department's initial objective is to return to our 2019 end strength numbers of 399,957 employees. So again, just under 400,000. Furthermore, VA administrations and staff offices will need to detail sufficient personnel to support this effort as outlined in this memorandum to focus on implementation and to synergize VA efforts. So basically, everybody's going to have to volunteer at least one person from their staff to do the cutting and slashing. But I think this gets into a little more detail. Let's take a look at the implementation timeline. So Part A, information gathering due March 10th, which is this coming up Monday. Administration and staff offices will gather information required as outlined in attachment one, which is at the end of this memo. Additionally, a separate memorandum on RIF procedures will be released, and I've already got that, and we'll be sharing that, which will include required information and actions. So there's also going to be a line of effort, LOE, and that's administrations and staff offices who will conduct an internal review and analysis of their organizations and require products to be delivered by April 10th, 2025. So it's a little bit more than a month away. And to provide responses to OMB and OPM phase two requirements by April 14th, 2025. And then the phase two is dealt with in the attachment as well. So goes on. So the LOE to intra-department. So a department-wide review will be completed, based on the stuff that's turned in April, will be completed by May 9th. VA will publish its reorganization plans in June 2025 with a department-wide RIF prior to the end of fiscal year 2025, which ends September 30th, as required by OMB and OPM. Throughout all phases of the operation, there will be ongoing reviews and interim briefings and decision points. Additional implementation guidance is forthcoming. So, program implementation, VA Organization Implementation Cell. So the VARIC, the Office of Human Resources and Administration / Operations Security and Preparedness, will stand up the VARIC to serve as a program manager and focus on implementation actions. The VARIC will expand to execute necessary functions for the reorganization. The following administrations and staff offices are required to detail a minimum of one individual at the grade of GS 14 or higher. So that's basically senior management, because the GS scale only goes up to GS 15. So you're talking higher level GS employees to support the VA's RIC activities and serve as a liaison to their organization. VHA, VBA, National Cemetery Administration, HRA, OSP, Office of Information Technology, Office of Acquisition, Logistics and Construction, Office of Enterprise Integration, Office of General Counsel, Office of Management, and Board of Veterans Appeals. So when they say VA-wide, they're not bullshitting. It's more than just the VHA, VBA, and National Cemetery Association. They're looking to reductions in IT, logistics, general counsel, BVA. If there's a VA tag on it, they're looking to streamline and do what they feel is necessary to do their RIF. So all the names need to be submitted to the email address they have listed there by yesterday. The start date will commence on March 6th, which is today, at whatever location that's the VA decides to provide. Initial details will be for a period of 120 days. So it's a 4-month detail that these individuals will be number crunching. So in addition, VA liaisons to Doge will be integrated into VA RIC operations, ensuring positive and continuous communications with the administration through all phases of operation. Administration of staff offices will designate a senior leader. Those are SES, so those are even higher levels than the GS personnel. Those are senior management, to serve as a central point of contact for time-sensitive issues or where senior level contact is needed to resolve issues. Undersecretaries, assistant secretaries, and other key officials will serve on the executive review group. Membership will also include senior advisors and VA Doge liaisons. The executive review group will address issues and make recommendations to the secretary for decision. The secretary or designee will chair the ERG. And then the secretary will chair an initial senior meeting on March 5th. Invitation is forthcoming, and that was signed by Christopher Cyrek.
Let me jump in here real quick and tell you about my boot camp. If you want to learn more about the VA claims process, check out my boot camp. You can talk to me live. There's a link on the website and in the description, combatcraig.com. And also, if you need medical evidence like a nexus or documenting your symptoms properly, go to our website, combatcraig.com, and it says medteam/nexus letters. Click on that link, fill out the form, boom, you're done.
And here's the attachment. So incoming data call information gathering, which started back on February 28th and runs through March 10th, which is next Monday. Provisions of organizational charts and structures for all organizations down to the lowest level. Provision of unit manpower documents by organization. So everybody's got to produce their manpowers, how many people are staffed in each office, organizational charts, and all that sort of things. List of statutory mandated functions, entities, certifications that have been interpreted to cover only what they explicitly require. So they don't want people doing cross-functioning jobs. They need to figure out what exactly every position does, things of that nature. List of regulatory directed functions. So jobs that are, required by regulation. List of organizations and total number of positions that provide direct service to veterans, meaning face-to-face, like if you go into a VA regional office and you're talking one-on-one to a VA employee, whether that's going into the hospital and you're seeing, a nurse, a doctor, so that they're providing direct service, support operations, so people you're not necessarily seeing, but they're behind the scenes working, doing things like they work in the pharmacy, so they're supporting, but you're not necessarily seeing them, from a customer service standpoint, but they are, VA employees. And then those that are management overhead. So the list of positions, essential positions that excluded from potential reduction/RIF and not mandated as essential during a lapse in appropriations using the agency's plan submitted to OMB in 2019. So if you remember, maybe you do, maybe you don't, because I don't know how much discussion they've had, but whenever there's been a government shutdown, there are certain amount of VA employees that even though there was a government shutdown and they weren't, being paid during the shutdown, they eventually got paid after the fact. But, there are essential positions that are going to come to work regardless. And then basically those non-essential people get a paid vacation. Take that for what you will. But there's never been a government shutdown where everybody hasn't been paid in full. So, those quote unquote essential employees felt like they were getting screwed because they had to work, and those who are in non-essential positions basically got a free vacation for the time that they missed. Because again, there's never been a government shutdown where everybody, regardless of whether they worked or not during that shutdown, they didn't receive their full paycheck and back pay. That's just kind of the way shit went, but it is what it is. Anyway, so now they're looking at a installation. So a list of installations across the department with assigned personnel and capacity. So they're wanting to list all of the VA facilities and their staffing levels. Are they overstaffed, understaffed, etc.? So they want to know where everything is located and what capacities and numbers they're looking at. Technologies and systems. So they want to know all the systems being used, VA-wide identification of all systems utilized by the department for its mission to include costs, contracts, and associated personnel. That's where IT and all that stuff comes into place. Initial input of any identified organization, unit, or mission should be eliminated or consolidated, in which specific subcomponents or functions, if any, should be expanded to deliver on the president's priorities. Suggested plan for congressional engagement to gather input and agreement on major restructuring efforts and movement of funding between accounts as applicable. So they want to be able to shift money, from VBA to VHA VHA to IT, whatever the case might be. They want to be able to shift money that they're diverting from one place to be able to, if they cancel contracts for, you know, company X, Y, and Z, they can shift that money to the hospital side to better treat veterans, things of that nature. So that's what we're talking about with restructuring and movement of funding between accounts. And then additional implementation guidance is forthcoming, and we're going to take a look at that here in just a minute. Let's also take a look at this. This was done by Leo Shane. Um, he has a 3 minute and 47-second interview with Doug Collins, and this was actually done this morning. So let's take a quick listen to this. It's only 3 minutes and 47 seconds if you want to bear with me, and let's take a listen to this.
So much for sitting down with us.
No, glad to be here.
I wanted to start off talking about some of the radical changes we've seen in the last few days at VA. In the month you've been here, we've seen some contract cuts, we've seen some staffing cuts. There's now a report out that up to 80,000 staffers could be cut in coming months. Is VA in a very different place, in a very better place than it was just a couple weeks ago?
I think we are. Well, thanks for the question. I mean, look, you've been covering this a long time. You see what we have. What we're looking at right now is generational change. It's not generational change just at the VA. It's across government. President Trump, when he came in, he ran on this. This was not a secret to anyone about size of government, scope of government, how we actually, at the end of the day, do what we do. And I think that's the part that I think is here that I want people to understand as we move forward here to the VA. You call it radicalization. I call it normalization. Why is it okay in looking at contracts, and we've only, like I said, touched 2% of our contracts, but yet in 2% of the contracts, we found over $900 million in this kind of thing that we're moving back into this complex that were either duplicative or non-mission essential. That shouldn't be radical. That should be normal. We should be looking at this all the time. Personnel issues. We're looking at it from a perspective of the last few years. We've grown rapidly here at the VA. But yet on the same time, we've also had our backlog on benefits cases, and also some of our wait times and other issues go up at our hospitals. Well, if money and people were always the solution, then this would have been solved years ago. Johnny Isaacson, who was a dear friend of mine, who was the chairman of the VA committee in the Senate, made a comment almost 10 years ago now. He said, inherently the problem at the VA, and his was his opinion at the time, was not a money issue, it was an organizational issue. And so we're looking at it from a perspective of how do we make the greatest employees in the world, which I think our VA employees are, better, more efficient to do one thing. The government is not about employing people, it's about serving people. And that's what we're doing here.
So you mentioned the organizational change here.
Yes.
There's a leaked memo out. There's a report out now that there could be up to 80,000 cuts and a really fundamental reorganization coming in the next few months. Is that the plan here? Are we looking at cuts of that size and a real complete rethinking of how VA is organized in terms of its workforce?
Well, we are looking at it from a top-down process. And also we're responding to what the administration has stated, that we're going to do a total-wide government reduction in force. We're looking at that, and VA, of course, has a large footprint to go there. So if you look at the numbers in which we're looking at now, that was back to 2019, 2020 levels of staffing. Mm-hmm. The question is going to come and I've shared this with some of our the VSOs and other people as well, is if the answer was money and people, then we should have solved our problems a long time ago. The problem is not really at this point. It's the question is, are we utilizing that function the best way we possibly can? You've been covering it here for a long time, and I thought we talked about that, but both of us a little bit long in the tooth on the hill here. But the question is, it's not sometimes are we just putting money. There's a game being played here, and it's been here for years. And it's called, let's give money and stuff to the VA, and then let's beat up on the VA when they're not doing what they think they're supposed to be doing. That's just going to stop here. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to work together with the funds and resources we have to make a better, quote, product with some of the best employees around who want to take care of veterans. I'm putting the veteran back first. So for me, it's about looking at this and making some big changes. And that, yes, that is concerning. It's concerning for me, and there's nothing, for people who do get laid off and already have. That's something I take very personally, especially as secretary. But the question at the end of the day is, what is our purpose and what is our mission? Our mission and purpose is the VA is the veteran, and we're going to do that the best way we possibly can.
All right, so that is VA Secretary Doug Collins, and this is courtesy of Leo, Shane, and Military Times. I want to make sure they get their credit for this. So that's basically what this article talks about. So yeah, I will link this article as well if you want to go through and read it. It's not too terribly long.
Let me jump in here real quick and tell you about my boot camp. If you want to learn more about the VA claims process, check out my boot camp. You can talk to me live. There's a link on the website and in the description, combatcraig.com. And also, if you need medical evidence like a nexus or documenting your symptoms properly, go to our website, combatcraig.com, and it says medteam/nexus letters. Click on that link, fill out the form, boom, you're done.
But anyways, all right. So we've gotten through that. Now there was also something I just got my hands on just a little while ago that has to do with what's the best way to describe this? Is another memorandum. This is the actual reduction in force reorganizational plan, and I'm going to share that as well. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so this is dated March 6, 2025, just today, from the Chief Human Capital Officer, subject Department of Veterans Affairs, Agency Reduction in Force and Reorganizational Plan. And this was sent out to a bunch of high-level VA personnel. Again, this is something that did not go out VA wide. So this is definitely, I guess we'd call it leaked memo. So this memorandum directs servicing human resource offices to begin reduction of force planning as outlined below. On March 4th, 2025, the Chief of Staff prompted guidance on the President's memorandum implementing President Trump's Executive Order 14210, implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency Workforce Optimization Initiative and Office of Personnel Management guidance on agency RIF and reorganizational plans requested by implementing the President's Department of Government Efficiency Workforce Optimization Initiative for Department of Veterans officials. As outlined in Executive Order 14210, President Trump directed that all agency reduction in force and reorganization plans known as ARRP are be submitted 30 days from the date of the executive order, which is March 13th, 2025. The review will take several months with published plan expected in June 25. Following the review, VA will initiate department-wide RIF actions. In planning for RIF reorganization, HROs and the Office of Chief Human Capital Officer will take the following steps. And that is to complete processing of all deferred resignation program elections. So basically the people who volunteered to resign with the 6-month payout, all those people will be dealt with first, and we'll see what the final number is on that. And remember, they're wanting to get to 83,000 people. So that wasn't a whole hell of a lot, if I remember correctly. So identify approval authorities for RIF actions in accordance with VA Handbook 5005, Part 4. C, cease any changes to organizational charts or planned reorganization unless authorized by the Undersecretary, Assistant Secretary, or key official for the organization. The established competitive area for ARRP is VA-wide. So the reason they're doing that is that way you can't stash people in other organizations, reorganize, they're not wanting you to do any reorganizational charts to where you can stash people in other locations. Like an example of that was, I know there was an example back when they were trying to get rid of all the DEI stuff. They were, people who were running the DEI programs were stashed in other areas and reassigned to try to stash them in other locations. So that's just one example of that, and they're trying to eliminate those sort of tactics. So they're not wanting to do any sort of reorganization or anything like that without prior approval. Coordinate recruitment actions for exempted positions with established RIF item or RIF teams. Communicate opportunities for employees to accept voluntary reassignments to exempt positions and post internal job boards VA wide. So what that's going to deal with is, if you're in a position that can possibly get reduced, and this would probably apply more to management personnel, because when you reduce personnel, obviously you don't need as many management people in order to manage them, less workforce, less managers. So a certain amount of the reduction will be in management. But what they're going to allow happen, it sounds like, is move some of these management people who have prior experience into some of these voluntary reassignments to exempt positions. And like an example of an exempt position, more than likely on the VBA side would be an RVSR, because according to law, it's my understanding that for benefit entitlement, those sort of things cannot be done through AI, which is what the VA is looking to do probably within the next 5 years, if not sooner, is to try to streamline things via AI. Currently, as the law is situated, it actually has, decisions regarding benefits, service connection and things of that nature has to be done by a living, breathing individual. So they can't really have that done through automation. They can use automation to streamline the process, but when it actually comes to making the decision, that has to be done by a living, breathing individual. So you might see some, junior management officials who are potentially on the chopping block reassigned to those sort of positions. Establish a separate retention register for non-competing employees, reemployed annuitants, temporary and term employees. Consult management officials and or supervisors regarding justification for employees to remain or confirm the date of separation. So they're going to make sure they got all their I's dotted and T's crossed. And they're obviously wanting supervisors to justify keeping certain employees. They're going to create rosters identifying employees eligible for voluntary early retirement authority during calendar year 2025. So if you're eligible for early retirement, looks like they're going to probably force you into that. And in point 4, which I'll get to in a minute, it looks like there is going to be a voluntary separation incentive payment for those people who are kind of forced to that route. Confirm accuracy of all competitive levels within the components or subcomponents. Updating correct VA employee records and data fields in HR Smart to include appointment type, tenure, veterans preference, position description, service computation date, bargaining unit status, and 3 past performance ratings within the last 4 years. So they will be looking at your performance. So if you weren't highly rated during the last 4 years, you potentially could be on the chopping block. So hopefully everybody's performance is, outstanding or exceptional to kind of not hopefully have to worry about that. And then implement RIF support functions, outplacement guidance, records retention and reporting, employee benefits advisory, etc. And then to assist with implementing the workforce optimization initiative, OCHCO will submit to OPM a department-wide request for VERA and volunteer separation incentive payment. Again, so it looks like for those who are voluntarily separated, they are going to be given some sort of a payout. So that is that. So to conclude, that's the nuts and bolts of what they're going to look at initially. More information will follow. Stay tuned, and we will update as more information comes out. So until then, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk soon.
Let me jump in here real quick and tell you about my boot camp. If you want to learn more about the VA claims process, check out my boot camp. You can talk to me live. There's a link on the website and in the description, combatcraig.com. And also, if you need medical evidence like a nexus or documenting your symptoms properly, go to our website, combatcraig.com, and it says medteam/nexus letters. Click on that link, fill out the form. Boom, you're done.